Now, recently, my son and I, we were both in Las Vegas, and I've shared some videos that talks about our experience. But one of the things I realized, and I didn't even know a lot of this until some years ago when hubby and I went to Vegas and we decided to do a tour of the Las Vegas Museum, which is the Mob Museum. And you'll see here some pictures of us. Well, him more so, because he was more excited about this than I was. And you can see right here, he's in his Aki, smiling as he stood before the Mob Museum. But it was an interesting tour. And for me, it was a lot of new knowledge, because I knew that, you know, Vegas was built on a lot of criminality, but I had no idea to what extent. So knowing that and having seen what we saw in the Las Vegas, the Mob Museum, which is in Old Vegas. So if you go there, it's a tour that I recommend. I can't remember what it cost, but it's not that expensive. And if you want to understand, or if you love history like we do, then it's going to be worth the money. But all that said, I wanted to use this particular video here that I created using InVideo AI, and I'm going to link InVideo below, and I'll also link a video as to how you can create videos like this. It's a faceless video, and all I did was I gave InVideo a command that says, create a video for me. This is the length I want. This is, you know, these are the details, and I want it to be based on Las Vegas history and, you know, how it started compared to how things are going now and most people's perception of Las Vegas, which is dazzling light, casinos, and a lot of excitement. So enjoy the documentary. It's gonna be in my voice, because as a part of that tool, I'm able to clone my voice. It's just gonna sound a little bit more fancy. But enjoy the video and tell me in the comments if you had any idea that the history of Vegas was that terrible. Las Vegas, home of dazzling lights, 24-hour casinos, Elvis impersonators, and weddings where you can say, I do faster than you can lose your life savings at the roulette table. But this neon playground where dreams are made, money is lost, and history is buried deeper than the blackjack tables wasn't always the family-friendly vacation spot it is today. This city of neon lights, lavish shows, and high-stakes gambling was built on a foundation of organized crime, dirty money, mob money, and more shady deals than a used car lot on the wrong side of town and some of the most notorious gangsters of the 20th century. Sit tight, because today we're diving into the wild history of Sin City, where gangsters ruled, fortunes were made, and the house always won, even if it cheated. So grab your chips, place your bets, and let's roll the dice on the tale of Las Vegas. Before it was Sin City, Las Vegas was more like Snooze City, just a quiet desert outpost with a couple of saloons, a train station, and enough tumbleweeds to stage a Western movie. But in 1931, when Nevada legalized gambling, the town's fortunes changed overnight. Suddenly, Las Vegas had a new calling, separating people from their money as quickly as possible. And they've been perfecting that craft ever since. Let's take it back to the early days, the Great Depression. It's 1931, and the government decides to build the Hoover Dam, bringing in thousands of workers looking to blow off steam after a hard day's work. Legalized gambling and an influx of rowdy workers meant one thing: opportunity. And Vegas answered the call with open arms, cold beers, and the sweet sound of slot machines. It wasn't long before casinos started popping up like desert daisies, and the first seeds of what we know as the Strip were planted. Back then, the casinos were rough and gritty, more smoke-filled rooms than luxury resorts. But the city's potential was as bright as the blazing Nevada sun, and it was only a matter of time before some enterprising businessmen saw the gold mine hidden in the sand. enter the gangsters, the mob looked at Las Vegas and saw a blank canvas for their greatest masterpiece, a city that would be both a playground and a cash cow, where the booze flowed, the dice rolled, and the feds, well, let's just say they weren't exactly invited to the party. Bugsy Siegel, Meyer Lansky, and the rest of the mob's all-star lineup took a gamble on Vegas, and the odds were very much in their favor. Bugsy Siegel, the pretty boy gangster with Hollywood connections and a taste for the finer things, had a vision. A Vegas Strip lined with luxurious hotels that would draw in the rich, famous, and anyone who could afford a room and a roll of the dice. In 1946, he opened the Flamingo Hotel, named after his girlfriend, Virginia Hill, whose nickname was Flamingo due to her long legs. Siegel didn't just want a casino, he wanted a palace, and he got it, at least for a little while. The opening of the Flamingo was like a Hollywood premiere. Red carpets, celebrities, and enough sequins to blind a man from a mile away. But there was just one little problem. The place was hemorrhaging money faster than a bad gambler on a losing streak. Bugsy's dream was turning into a nightmare, and his investors, who happened to be some of the most dangerous men in America, weren't exactly pleased with the ROI. Rumor has it, Bugsy was skimming money to fund his lavish lifestyle, and his mob buddies were about as forgiving as a blackjack dealer with a cold streak. In 1947, Bugsy was famously gunned down in Beverly Hills, marking one of the most dramatic exits in Vegas history. His death was a stark reminder. In Vegas, you could get rich, but you could also get dead. As they say, you play with the mob's money, you play with your life. Bugsy might have been gone, but the mob was just getting started. By the 1950s, Las Vegas was a mobster's paradise. Guys like Meyer Lansky, Frank Costello, and Tony the Ant Spilotro were running the show, and business was booming. They were the unofficial mayors of Las Vegas, and if you wanted to get anything done, you'd better have their blessing, or at least their cut. Frank "Lefty" Rosenthal was one of the brains behind the operation. He was a math genius and master manipulator who turned the stardust into a money printing machine. But Lefty wasn't just about the games. He introduced sports betting, lavish shows, and even gourmet dining, a first for any casino. If you wanted steak and lobster at 3 a.m., Lefty had you covered. Of course, that gourmet meal probably came with a side of missing cash from the counting room. The mob didn't just want a piece of the pie, they wanted the whole bakery. Skimming was the name of the game. The casinos were packed, the cash was flowing, and a good chunk of it was being siphoned off before it could ever be reported. Imagine hitting the jackpot only to realize the house was winning bigger behind your back. It was like playing a game of Monopoly, where the banker keeps half the cash under the table. Las Vegas wasn't just a haven for gamblers and gangsters. The city became a hotspot for Hollywood stars, musicians, and anyone looking for a good time. Frank Sinatra and the Rat Pack turned Vegas into their personal playground, bringing a touch of class and a whole lot of chaos. They performed at mob-run casinos, hobnobbed with gangsters, and made Vegas the coolest place on the planet. The Rat Pack wasn't just performing, they were living the Vegas dream. And who could blame them? Where else could you drink, gamble, perform, and still be tucked in bed by dawn, if you made it to bed at all? But behind the glitz and glamour, the mob was always pulling the strings. The performers, the tourists, the high rollers, they were all part of the game. By the 1970s, the feds had had enough of the mob's Vegas shenanigans. the FBI began cracking down, tapping phones, raiding casinos, and throwing mobsters in jail like it was a clearance sale at the courthouse. Guys like Lefty Rosenthal and Tony Spilotro found themselves at the wrong end of the law, and the days of mob rule were numbered. As the mobsters were shipped off to prison, corporate America saw their chance to clean up and cash in. Casinos were taken over by legitimate businesses, and Vegas went through a facelift that would make even the best plastic surgeon jealous. Out went the gangsters and came the CEOs, and suddenly Vegas was less Godfather and more Wall Street. A few years ago, hubby and I did a tour of the Mob Museum in Old Vegas. We thoroughly enjoyed the experience due to my love of history and his curiosity about the mob. Here are some photos taken back then of hubby outside the museum. Can you tell he was in his key, meaning he was excited? Look at his face. Inside, we saw the actual wall of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, which hubby is here posing before. Valentine's Day Massacre was a notorious mob hit that took place in Chicago on February 14th, 1929, during the height of the Prohibition era. It stemmed from the fierce rivalry between two mob bosses, Al Capone and George Bugs Moran. Capone's men disguised as police officers lured Moran's gang to a garage under the guise of a bootlegging deal. When Moran's men lined up thinking it was a police raid, Capone's hitmen opened fire, killing 7 of Moran's key associates. The massacre solidified Capone's dominance in Chicago's underworld, while Moran, who narrowly escaped, was left weakened. The event became one of the most infamous gangland slayings in American history, overshadowing any Valentine's Day, love with bullets, and betrayal. In the museum, we also saw several of the weapons and armor used by the mob and the electric chairs and gas chambers where they were killed when found guilty in a court of law. The Nevada gas chamber, introduced in 1924, was the first of its kind in the US, marking a new approach to capital punishment. The debut execution featured G. John, a convicted murderer who unwittingly became a pioneer when Nevada chose cyanide gas as a more humane alternative to hanging or firing squads. The initial plan to pump gas into his cell failed, prompting the state to construct a sealed chamber instead. Despite a rocky start and plenty of trial and error, the gas chamber did its job, though not without its share of malfunctions and darkly comedic moments. Over time, the method was phased out due to its inhumane nature, leaving the gas chamber as a peculiar and unsettling chapter in the history of capital punishment. As I showed in my previous videos on this channel, where my son and I visited Las Vegas, today Las Vegas is a mecca of entertainment, luxury, and high-stakes gaming. But never forget, it was built on the backs of mobsters, gamblers, and dreamers who bet it all on the city of sin. From dusty desert town to world-famous playground, Vegas's history is as wild and unpredictable as the roll of the dice. So next time you're sipping a cocktail on the Strip, remember you're standing on the bones of the past where gangsters rolled the dice and sometimes lost. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this wild ride, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below about your favorite Vegas story. And remember, what happens in Vegas started with a little crime and a lot of ambition. Until next time, keep rolling the dice.